All right. Okay, good. Mic is working. So first, I'm super happy for these chairs because if anybody saw Lauris and I walk up here together, if we were standing, I would feel kind of an inferiority complex the rest of the time. Luckily, we're sitting. But anyway, to kick us off, I think today one of the things we're really focusing on talking about and getting Lauris's perspective on is this guy is a sales and growth beast. I mean, he's done it in the companies that you just heard about. A lot of you guys know those companies. But it's a very different time right now. Technology landscapes are moving incredibly quickly, both in terms of like the core technology stack, but also how people are discovering technology tools, how they're switching between technology tools, how they're combining them, integrating them. I mean, every single week, there's a new thing that's taking over the world, a new way of doing things. And these guys have been growing incredibly quickly. Shameless plug, they're one of our portfolio companies, so very happy to see it. But hopefully what we can do today is Lauris can share, like, how do you do that now? How do you do that in 2026, in March 2026 when things are shifting? So let's kick off. Maybe just a quick refresh on some of those numbers at the top is 41,000 monthly active users, or what is it now?
It's going to be 100 in March.
Okay, so small update. 100,000 monthly active users. I think they said number 5 on Anthropic's Cloud Connectors list, but I think it's number 2 now, right?
We were number 2, but actually today they are changing some things, and currently we show up there as number 5, so that's correct.
Oh, number 5, okay. You had a 1.14 million pre-seed round. We were a part of that, 42 cap, led the round, and now you guys are growing. I think what would be interesting, maybe you can kick off and tell the story. Like, how did you guys get off the ground?
Sure. So first of all, thanks. Nice to meet you all. I'm Lauris, and yeah, glad to be here with Ben. Been running sales teams in startups, currently part of Desktop Commander. So, well, to start the story, actually, the story starts with Edwards, our co-founder and CEO, and the creator of Desktop Commander, and him playing around and trying to build stuff that he needs in his daily work as an engineer, which he did quite brilliantly. So he started with something as a side project on GPT first, actually. Then when MCP concept came out, he built an so-called MCP. So to those who don't know, that's a plugin into AI tools that lets them talk to other external systems and tools. In our case, it lets them talk to your local file system and computer. So Edwards did that, and he published a couple of videos that at some point started picking up, so showing that there's some interest and then also some growth in terms of user numbers. Started for the MCP. So that was around March last year. Yeah, so that's actually the initial story. Edwards built the MCP, which is one part of our product, the free product part, and it took off. There were some good initial signals. Then there's some more, but the very initial story is that.
Yeah. So 100,000 users now. You know, nothing is simple, and I'm sure that we could get into the details of it. But big picture, if you were to kind of identify 3 key decisions you guys made on the product side, on the positioning side, that are driving growth, what were those 3 key decisions that you guys made?
Yeah, and actually, let me step back and maybe briefly just tell what Desktop Commander is. So it's an AI tool that lets LLMs access your computer and file systems. So if you have any files on your computer, if you are doing something with them, converting, moving, or whatsoever, you can do it faster, easier with Desktop Commander. A super simple example, which actually most of users start with, is, hey, organize my downloads folder or my desktop. And then you just sit and watch. You'll see, files moving around, however you ask it to do, by date or by content that's on these files or so on. That's a very simple example of what it does. And it has two parts. There's the app, the chat app, like most of AI chat apps. And there's the free part of the product, so-called MCP server, which is a free plugin that's used in other AI tools. And that's where we have these 100,000 users right now. And that's an important part of our go-to-market strategy. Now, going back to the question, what led to this? So at that time, MCP concept had just came out. Nobody knew what's going to happen. It actually peaked. Overall hype in MCPs peaked like July, August last year. So March was still a little bit before that peak. And we were raising pre-seed round in June, July. So our hypothesis was that we're going to grow our free user base on MCP. Then we will launch our app. We'll be able to drive users from MCP to the app and convert them there, which is a kind of long shot at the point when you only have free product, which is used by some kind of early enthusiasts. So we actually kept that hypothesis, and we kept working, and we didn't go away from it. And what that meant relying on this open source product as our key early distribution channel. It was kind of risky decision, but well, we took it and we kept it. We kind of kept executing on it. So it was published. There were some MCP marketplaces that were popular back then some other marketplaces saw it growing. So it kind of got published elsewhere. And then we knew it's an important part of our strategy. So we want to be on Claude. We want to be here. So we did also a bit of kind of proactive work to make sure that it is embedded in the ecosystem and it is used in other AI tools.
Yeah. No, and you bring up a really good point, which is it's a fairly high-risk strategy to kind of go open source at top of funnel because you kind of lose some of that control over, okay, I know exactly sort of how I'm going to be driving users. There's sort of a little bit of user independence, right, of decision making. I think one of the things that we see a lot of the time, so last year at Bad Ideas, I think we saw, and just in terms of pitch decks and like people applying to get funded, over 3,000 companies. I can't remember what the exact number is. A lot of those guys, obviously in AI, one of the things we see a lot of is like, look at all this traction. And there's essentially, you know, those numbers could be, you know, monthly active users. It could be like total number of users that have ever used the product. But right now, you know, the switching cost with AI tools is pretty low. So people are experimenting. Like probably everybody in this room, right, has tried a ton of different AI products, different tools, switching back and forth between LLMs. So my question to you is, on the road to 100,000 users, how are you distinguishing between what's just like experimentation AI traffic versus real traction?
Well, we did also have ups and downs in that journey. Again, I think the main thing was kind of staying on track, having hypotheses and staying on track and executing on it. What we did already from the very early days, so the nuance with MCP is that you only see technical data. It's a plugin that's used in other tool. And it's a downloadable plugin. So you only see when somebody downloads it and uses it. But you don't have user information. You don't have emails. You know nothing about them. You can't really send emails or something like that. But what we did from the very early days, we tried to figure out the ways how we can talk to our users. And there are some ways. So we were able to invite them to surveys via kind of inviting them via MCP and injecting invite to that. So we did a lot of user research since the very early days. We did two things. We did quantitative surveys. And we did then also a lot of interviews. So we were actually talking to these users all the time since the very beginning. And then also, well, we see the retention data, and retention data are not great because of the nature of the product and all that. So you really need to figure out, so like, is there actually something true in it? And well, we saw two really good things. First of all, quantitatively, so there's this benchmark, I guess, from the founder of this Supernatural. No.
Superhuman, I think.
Superhuman.
Yeah,
Superhuman. There's this benchmark when he was seeking for product market fit. He was asking users, would you be disappointed if the product wouldn't exist? And the benchmark was that if 40% of users would answer that, yeah, I'd be very disappointed, that's a really good signal of product market fit. So he was kind of testing that. So we got 60% from our users. That was one part to it. Another was that they were reporting that they are really saving a lot of hours. So 25% of users said they save over 10 hours per week. And then there were some more users that would save less hours. So that was something that was coming from quantitative data. And then from qualitative data, so yeah, we were really talking to users, and they're like, yeah, guys, I mean, that's amazing. Just keep doing this. You gave me skills that I didn't know I have. And that was really, really awesome. So we really were getting some really good user feedback. But I think the key was that from the very first early days, we really, and that way to talk to them, it wasn't very clear how we could do that, but we started doing it, and it was clear that we have to do it, so we kept doing it.
Yeah. So I didn't write this question down earlier, but I kind of, maybe for founders who are in the room, how did you guys are three co-founders, right?
Yeah.
Three co-founders. I think you guys, what's the rest of the team size?
We're now 7 in total.
7, okay. How do you, as a founder, how do you think about, for example, those qualitative interviews, right? They're manual. They're not like super efficient. They're not desktop commander, right? You have to talk to the user. Yeah. How did you guys think of who on the team is taking that? How important it is, whether it's a founder or whether it's someone else? How do you think of like where does that interview need to happen? How do you do that?
Yeah, I don't think it's extremely high number that we've done, but maybe it's probably a decent number, and we've done probably around 100 of them, like really qualitative interviews, each more or less an hour. And definitely Edwards, CEO and the creator, is the champion there. But generally, we all tried to participate, like really all of us. Well, sometimes when it felt like, okay, maybe it's just too much when it's 3 people versus 1, so we would switch up. But no, we were all trying to participate. We were, we were all trying to participate, but Edwards is the champion. And then, well, we're also, from the operational point of view, also using desktop commander, we're automating some of that stuff in the sense of digesting kind of essence of those. So we download transcripts, we put them in a folder, then we have workflow that would summarize and kind of all that. So we would just query against that folder and get the information that we need. So that part was also automated operationally. But yeah, we did put some time into it.
Yeah. So switching up a little bit, maybe topics is go back to, let's say, I don't know, April, May of last year. You guys are looking at raising your first round. As you mentioned, MCP is growing a lot in hype, but fundamentally, people don't really know yet what it is or what it's going to be, right? So, if I maybe juxtapose that versus 3 years ago, if you're building in payments or in SaaS, and you're saying it's the X of Y industry, creating a comparable with something for people, for VCs to be able to understand. How did you guys approach storytelling of how we're going to communicate our round to investors when, maybe you have an advantage. It's like everyone's talking about MCP all the time, but people don't really know what it is, how it's going to be monetized, what it's going to be in the ecosystem, where it's going to sit in the stack. How did you guys think about that internally and decide like on strategy? And then how did you do that going into pitches with investors?
Well, we were quite clear and honest about that in the sense that, well, we said, yeah, well, we don't know what's going to happen here, but this is the hypothesis. And what was clear was that something is happening, that we have some traction. So obviously you want to figure out the ways how to leverage that. So doing something else would be simply stupid. So, and then we developed a hypothesis that we can grow this even further. We can't monetize MCP users because that's just a free plugin. Maybe we will be in the future. It's used inside of other tools, so we need to launch our own app with this capability, with MCP behind it, and some other feedback that we already had from users about limitations that they were hitting in other tools. And that was our plan, and we really clearly and openly said, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen, but this is the hypothesis, and this is how we're going to execute on that hypothesis. Like, like Edwards said it, like we got a ticket to Bloodbath. That's it. So, well, what do you do? Throw it away or go ahead? So we went ahead.
Yeah. It's interesting, you know, and obviously we participated in the round at Pre-Seed. What I can sort of add here is just, and no offense, and Edwards, I think I see you somewhere right there, yeah, is like, there just wasn't a lot to go on. Like, we don't know what's going to happen with MCP. We also don't know, for example, what's Anthropic going to do? What's OpenAI going to do? And everybody's like, I think on Monday, someone's like, well, they're not going to move into the application layer. And then on Tuesday, oh my God, they're going to eat the whole application layer. And everybody's kind of like blowing with the wind. And so we don't really have a lot of certainty as investors there at Pre-Seed when things are shifting. Traction is early. The number one thing, at least I can say this from our perspective, is proof of team's speed and execution. How quick are these guys moving? How quick are they learning, right? So everything Lauris was talking about data, right? Like, okay, cool, you've got 30,000 users. I don't really know what that means. Can you tell me more about those 30,000 users? What have you guys gathered from those 30,000 users? How many iterations of the product have you already done or you plan to do? What feedback do you already have? And if you guys can show me a loop of building quicker and quicker, yeah, I may have no idea and you may not know where you're going in the future, but what we have to go on is at least this is a team that can move quickly, that's paying attention to users and customers, that has a hypothesis, and they've got some proof. So for founders maybe who are in the room who are pre-seed, and maybe you're in a similar space and you're getting pushback from investors on like, well, you know, what's going to be the revenue at this point or all these things, and you don't know. Every investor is different, but at least I can say from our standpoint, like, be honest that you don't know. Focus on showing what your team can do. So yeah.
And I guess also a little bit tricky part was that essentially as we had MCP and we were working to launch our own app, we were basically working on two products simultaneously, which, and that was a big question, and we got challenged. Okay, so maybe you focus only on one thing and then see what happens. So yeah, but we stayed on course.
Okay, so staying in the raising money lane for one more question is, this is one of those that's like a great VC contradiction, right? It's like, well, I want to show that you guys need to show me that you're moving quickly, right? But you also need to be taking meetings with investors because you need to raise your round, right? And every hour in with an investor, and Edwards, I can feel you looking over here. Every hour in with an investor is an hour that you as a founder are not spending talking to a customer, iterating product, looking at data. How did you guys go about like looking at building your investor pipeline to sort of not have this huge opportunity, like sunk opportunity cost of like, yes, we're talking to all these VCs, maybe we're talking to 100 VCs, but that's 100 hours that you're not putting into the product. So how did you guys triage building your pipeline for investors?
Well, back then, actually, we didn't do much of it, and I'm going to tell why. We definitely will do now in the next round that we're preparing for. But that pre-seed round, it happened very fast. So we have Bad Ideas and we have 42 Cap, which is a fund from Germany. And we were working on a deck. We were working on our story and all the materials and everything. We hadn't started raising. Well, yeah, actually 42 Cap reached out to us. We had some, well, we had on our LinkedIn that we're working on something, and so some people sometimes reached out. 42 Cap were one of them. And then we started the conversation, and then that, okay, it's interesting, let's have another conversation and another conversation. And it happened so that basically, and that's the feedback they gave us later, that, well, they knew, they approached us when, well, it turned like we weren't ready. And then they saw how we are improving over time. So, okay, next week, okay, they have a deck, they have now data room, they have this and that, and they really gave feedback that they really liked how we iterated and how we put the whole thing, the story together from this early first meeting. And then it kind of escalated. Actually, it happened really fast.
Yeah.
It happened really fast. So, and for us, it was, so we hadn't started the process. We had the numbers, we had the story, we were working hard, but we weren't fundraising hard yet. We got the term sheet from 42 Cap, same day we pitched to Bad Ideas, and same day we finished our pitch deck. So, and it was so that, okay, so what do we do now? We could go and do something more, or let's prioritize time and speed is of essence for us, and especially in this space. So it was like, okay, and looks like these guys are good. We spoke to some other companies, so we just, okay, let's call it done.
Okay. If you're a pre-seed founder in the room, okay, maybe they're not necessarily building exactly in your space, but let's say that they're building sort of in a space that's inherently dev tools, AI forward. What's your biggest advice on how to negotiate, like, speed and growth? I think you just said it, like speed is of the essence, but you know, how do you think of like building traction, allotting the time to the product and growth, but being able to raise money? I mean, a 1.1 million round is a pretty good result, right? What advice would you give to pre-seed founders right now, what to focus on, how to think about building out that roadmap of speed versus raising?
Look, really, honestly, I like, in a sense, I don't really have much experience, right? It happened very fast, and now we're gonna hopefully do a round soon, and I think I'll be able to give a better answer then. I think a few things that really were important for us. We had a story. We stayed on that story. We stuck with it. We were very transparent with the investors, because I'll maybe tell a story. We had a bit of a, not a hiccup, but like discovery, again, in the data. So we only saw technical data. We see only user data. We see it in analytics dashboards. We see our user data are growing. We see we're like 40,000 MAUs. And then as we are working and we are pitching simultaneously and talking to investors, right, and we're seeing that, part of these users actually behave weird, but that was visible only because it was happening in the process. So we realized, actually, that out of those 40,000 users, 20 are probably not actual users, but implementations of our product in some other product, because it was like, it didn't show that typical user behavior. And we were like, okay, what do we do with that? Well, we kind of prepared the report. This is the data, this is what's happening, sent to you, sent to Bad Ideas, even had meetings to explain and to make sure that, I don't know, if it helped, probably you can tell, but that's what we did.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll speak on the transparency front. It's a tough line for founders. I'm a former founder. The line between, like, I need to sell my vision, I need to sell my company, I need to move things forward, but fundamentally, if you're going to take someone's money, having that basis of relationship of honesty is important. I can say when these guys came to us and were like, hey, we think 20,000 of these users could not actually be users. We don't know what they are. And that was the answer, and the answer wasn't some then repackaged of why it's actually great with lipstick on it. For us, that was like, okay, well, at least what we know is like what we see is what we'll get, right? So every other part of the story, every other part of the narrative, everything else we saw in data got a lot more credibility when the founder's willing to tell us that half of the monthly user base right now might not actually be there. So I can sort of speak to the honesty and transparency piece. It's not always easy, and I'm not saying, you know, you need to divulge every flaw, everything that's behind the curtain of how you guys are working, but I think that level of honesty still plays a huge part. I do want to move to right now, like talking about like building at the frontier of AI right now, like building in the MCP space, building like when we're seeing huge companies, for example, maybe in the application layer that are, you know, at 150, 180 million annual recurring revenue, and in 30 days they drop down to 60 because there's a new release of a new model, or simply because actually the models are now moving into that space, or maybe there's just a new player, right, that's coming into the market. So we see this happening right at the model layer. We see it happening at actually the distribution, and then we see it obviously in the application layer. Like culturally, process-wise, mindset-wise, how are you guys approaching looking at your growth, growing this company when it's shifting sands and the market is moving so quickly?
Yeah, it is a little frustrating sometimes. Well, yeah, speed is crazy. Like every day something is happening and it's changing the landscape. What we usually do whenever something major happens in the market, actually, well, we do have a discussion. Okay, so what does it mean for us now? Like, should we change something in regards to the strategy? If yes, then what? Like, do we even know what could be changed? And if no, then okay, well, let's stay on track, right? We don't have any better answers.
Yeah.
So, but we do look at it always. So, like, of course, when Cowork was launched, so Cowork was launched because Cowork essentially is very similar to Desktop Commander, just with less permissions, because they're going after more enterprise users. Well, essentially, they're going after Microsoft users, I guess. So when Cowork was launched, we were like, okay, so now what's going to happen now? And it was good for us because of the nature of the product, because of the MCP. Because our MCP, it was before Cowork, its most popular client was Cloud Desktop. And then when Cowork launched, it appeared that it was even more used in Cowork. So users couldn't do in Cowork what they intended to, and then they installed our plugin, which is on Marketplace with all the other plugins that they have to make it more capable. So as a result, we went from 30,000 MAUs to 100,000 MAUs in 3 months. So we'll, like, I think 13 November, 14 December, yeah, or no, 14, yeah, something like that. 16 February, 14 January, and 13 December, something like that. And now around 100 in March.
Yeah.
So that helped us because of this. So we kind of grow with the ecosystem, and that's where I guess our risky bet played off. So we bet on our open source product. Now it is embedded in the ecosystem, and actually now everybody is shifting to this AI as execution, AI as employee. That market is growing, so our free product grows within it. So that was good for us. But whenever all kind of major changes happened in the market, we really did come together and discuss, okay, what it means for us. Do we change the trajectory?
Yeah. I do want to highlight that's what's so, I mean, it's always been difficult, and the devil is in the detail, but in the example you gave on cowork is like not being lazy in understanding who is Anthropic really going after with this product and understanding where you sit relative to that. I can say, as an investor in Desktop Commander, when I saw cowork, I was like, oh, let me call Lauris and see what's going on. But that level of understanding and detail, really understanding what is the landscape right now, where are other players moving who might have an incumbent advantage. If Anthropic wants today to come after this user base, they can. They can do it. Yeah. But is that their motivation? Where's their motivation going to be? And I think for founders who are building, we preach a lot of like ship fast and get feedback, yes. But in parallel to that, like do your homework and understanding where are you in the market, where is the market going. The guys who we're most afraid of in terms of understanding who owns distribution, who owns like brand, who owns where users are first really interacting with AI and with products. What is their inherent motivation? Where are they going to go play next? And it's not like you will maybe be able to develop perfect certainty, but if you really are doing your due diligence, you can at least place a higher conviction hypothesis and go after that.
Well, there's so many things that we simply don't know and can't know. There are some that we do know. What we don't know and what we can't speculate, what Anthropic will do, what the OpenAI will do, they can do any freaking thing, really, like with the money they have, with the resources they have. So we can just hypothesize about that. It's like, meh, what's the point, right? What we do know is what our users do, what works for them, what doesn't. High level, we do know what's Anthropic's focus in terms of like customer segment, and their focus is enterprise, right? So, and based on that, we can make, again, form a hypothesis. That's going to still be hypothesis. And yes, whenever we are asked, yeah, but OpenAI could do that, right? Or Anthropic could do that. Yeah, of course, they could. And there's no argument for us to convince you why it wouldn't happen, because we simply can't know. We can only operate with some data that we do have.
Yeah, and just to give a data point to back up what Lauris is saying is, I think it was 12 months ago, Anthropic's market share of enterprise was 4%, and I believe today it's 60%. So if you're building right now and you're wondering about where is, at least right now, their focus, there is data to give you. As Lauris is saying, you're not going to know everything that they're working on, but you can get a general idea of the landscape, and that can help you to understand like where are things moving generally. After that, the rest is like you have to keep going and you have to listen to your users.
And also AI generally, it's so horizontal, right? There's so many use cases. They're not non-deterministic. There's so many users, right? It's like, it's different than SaaS. So yeah, CRM is CRM. That's, they're targeting salespeople. Accounting, finance software is for, like, this is different. It's like...
And that's a really good segue to the next question, which is really, so Lauris, you led sales teams at Prezi, Infogram, Printify, let's say like pre-AI age, a ton of experience of seeing how do software companies grow across different verticals and different business models, right? All three companies, pretty different. There's probably not one answer to this, but what are some of the fundamental differences you see in go-to-market and growth in AI versus in like the pre-AI SaaS era? What are the things that you're seeing now? I mean, maybe it's that horizontal thing. What are some of the signals and things that you just think are fundamentally different than they were 3-4 years ago?
Well, I guess that is probably the biggest. AI is way more horizontal, and you even see sales and growth leaders from other AI companies like talking about that, like Lovable and Elena Verna, and she's been mentioning in podcasts and everywhere that they are also reinventing their ICP pretty much like every month. They're very, it is horizontal, and the use cases are broad, and they're learning about it. So, and that kind of defines maybe this sales motion, go-to-market motion, where it's more bottoms up generally. Of course, then later on, all these big companies are still adding sales teams and going after some specific use cases or companies and verticals. So I think in that sense, it's still similar. Structure is similar, but I think it seems like it's more. It seems it's way more bottoms up. It's way more bottoms up. It's way more, let's get these users in, and then let's figure out what do they do, and then how do we add on top of that, as opposed to like choosing this one vertical and going, is that right or wrong? Difficult to tell, but I think everybody's kind of watching it and figuring out how it's going to play out.
Okay. Thanks, Lauris. I think we're out of time. Thanks to Lauris. Thank you for sharing your story so far with Desktop Commander, your insights with everyone. If there's founders in the room, I hope this guy, a shameless plug, is an absolute beast. He's seen a lot of different things in his career. We invested in him, but I'm learning from him every day. So if you get a chance to chat with him and get advice, I would say this is one of the people I would never hesitate to ask. And the same is true for the rest of his co-founding team. So thanks, Lauris.
Thanks, man.